The big hall was full of noise and worry. Representatives from 50 different alien races sat in curved rows, all looking at the same thing. A huge map of the galaxy floated in the air, made of tiny lights that showed stars and planets. But there was something wrong with this map. In one corner, the lights just stopped. There was a perfect round area with nothing shown inside it. Taman stood at the front of the room. He was tall and thin, with blue skin that marked him as one of the Althari people. His hands shook a little as he pointed at the empty space on the map. He had been studying this problem for 10 years, but he still felt scared when he talked about it. "Friends," he said, his voice carrying through the hall, "we are here today to discuss the greatest mystery our galaxy has ever known. 300 years ago, the humans were just like us. They traded with our worlds. They sent ambassadors to our meetings. Their ships traveled everywhere, exploring new planets and making friends with new species." He pressed a button, and the map changed. Now it showed the galaxy as it looked long ago. The empty space was filled with yellow dots, each one marking a human world. There were thousands of them. Then, in the year 2387, something happened. The humans sent out one last message to all the worlds they knew. It was simple and short. They said they needed time to think about important things. They said they would not contact anyone for a while. They promised they were not angry and that they meant no harm to anyone. Taman's voice got quieter. That was the last message anyone ever received from human space. 300 years of complete silence. In the audience, a small creature with 6 eyes raised one of its 4 arms. "Ambassador Taman, surely some ships have tried to visit human space in all this time." The question made everyone uncomfortable. Taman looked around the room. Many of the older delegates looked down at their hands or turned away. This was the part of the story that no one liked to talk about. "Yes," Taman said slowly. 17 different expeditions have tried to cross into human space over the centuries. Ships from many different species. Scientists, explorers, traders, even some military vessels. All of them had the same result, which was, asked the 6-eyed creature. They never came back. The hall became very quiet. Even the sound of the air systems seemed too loud. In the back of the room, a young woman named Haya Jin was taking notes on a small computer. She worked as a scientist who studied old civilizations and lost peoples. Her job was to understand what happened to species that disappeared. She had been studying the human mystery for 5 years, and she was sure that everyone was missing something important. Haya Jin had purple skin and silver hair that marked her as one of the Vorthan people. Her species was known for being very good at solving puzzles and finding hidden truths. But this puzzle was different from anything she had ever seen. She looked at her computer screen, which showed her own research about the human border. The edge of human space was too perfect. It formed an almost perfect sphere around exactly 2,247 star systems. No natural phenomenon could create such a precise boundary. Someone or something had made it that way on purpose. But there was something else that bothered her even more. In all her studies of lost civilizations, she had learned that when a species disappeared, they always left traces behind. Old ships floating in space, broken machines on dead planets, messages that were never finished. Something always remained. The humans had left nothing. It was as if they had all just vanished at exactly the same moment, taking everything they had ever built with them. Near the front of the room, another delegate stood up. This one was covered in thick gray fur and had small black eyes. He was one of the Kalari people, and his name was Do-hyun. The Kalari were known for being brave explorers who loved to travel to dangerous places. Do-hyun was young, only 25 years old, but he had already piloted ships to the edges of known space. "Ambassador Taemin," Do-hyun said, "my people have a saying. When something is hidden, there is always a reason. Maybe the humans are hiding for a good reason. Maybe they are protecting us from something." Some of the other delegates made unhappy noises. They did not like the idea that humans might know something they did not. An old delegate with red scales and a long tail stood up. His name was Kyung-soo, and he was a Drakmarian. His people were warriors who had fought many battles over the centuries. "Or maybe," he said in a rough voice, "the humans have become something dangerous. Maybe they are hiding because they have changed into something that would hurt us." This idea scared many of the delegates. They began talking loudly to each other, arguing about what might have happened to the humans. Tai-min held up his hands to make everyone quiet. "We do not know what happened," he said, "but we do know some facts. First, no signals of any kind come from human space. No radio waves, no light communications, nothing. Second, The border around human space has never changed, not even by a few kilometers. Third, space itself seems different near the border. Our instruments detect strange energy patterns that we do not understand. He pressed another button and the map changed again. This time it showed the area around the human border in great detail. Strange colors swirled near the edge like oil floating on water. Some of our scientists think that the humans might have built some kind of barrier around their space, a wall made of energy that keeps everything inside and everything outside separate, but we have never seen technology that could do such a thing. In the back of the room, Heejin was studying these energy patterns very carefully. She had seen something like them before, but only in very old ruins on dead worlds. Civilizations that had been gone for millions of years sometimes left behind traces of advanced technology that still worked. The patterns around human space looked similar, but much stronger and more complex. A soft voice spoke from the middle of the room. Everyone turned to look at a small, gentle creature with white fur and large blue eyes. Her name was So Young, and she was one of the Therian people. The Therians were experts at communication and could understand languages faster than anyone else. I have been listening to radio signals from the direction of human space for many years, So Young said quietly. I do not hear voices or messages, but sometimes when conditions are just right, I hear something else. It sounds like music, very faint, very distant, but it is there. This was new information. Many delegates leaned forward to hear better. What kind of music? Asked Taemin. It is hard to describe, So Young said. It is not like any music our peoples make. It sounds like it comes from everywhere at once, like the stars themselves are singing. Do-hyun felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories from old pilots about strange sounds near the human border, but he had always thought they were just tales meant to scare young crews. The meeting continued for several more hours, but no one had any real answers. The delegates argued about whether to try sending another expedition or whether to leave human space alone forever. Some wanted to build bigger weapons in case the humans had become dangerous. Others wanted to try to communicate using new methods. But as the delegates filed out of the hall, many of them knew the truth that no one wanted to say out loud. They were not avoiding human space because they respected the humans' wish to be left alone. They were avoiding it because they were afraid. Afraid of what they might find. Afraid of what might find them. Heejin stayed in the hall after everyone else had left. She stared at the floating map, with its perfect empty circle where human space should be. In her heart, she knew that this mystery would not solve itself. Someone would have to be brave enough to cross that border and find out what the humans had become. She just hoped that when someone finally did, they would be prepared for whatever they found on the other side. 3 months had passed since the meeting at the Galactic Council. Hyejin could not stop thinking about the human mystery. Every night she looked at her research files and tried to find clues that others had missed. She read reports from the 17 lost expeditions. She studied energy readings from the border. She even tried to learn some of the old human languages, hoping to understand their last messages better. Finally, she decided she could not wait for the council to act. She needed to see human space for herself. The problem was that no official expedition would be approved. The council was too afraid of losing more ships and crews. But Heejin had an idea. If she could not get official permission, she would have to find people willing to go without it. She started with Do-hyun, the young Kalari pilot from the meeting. She found him at a spaceport on the edge of council space where he was loading supplies onto a small trading ship. Do-hyun, she called as she walked across the busy landing platform. I have a question for you. He looked up from a crate of spare parts. His people had fur that changed color with their emotions, and right now it was a curious shade of green. Hello, Heejin. What kind of question? The kind that could get us both in serious trouble, she said with a small smile. His fur shifted to an interested yellow. Now I am definitely listening. She looked around to make sure no one else could hear them. How would you like to be the first person in 300 years to see what happened to the humans? Do-hyun set down the crate he was holding. You want to cross the border? Into human space? I want to find answers, Hyejin said. The council will debate and argue for years, but they will never actually do anything. Meanwhile, the mystery just gets bigger. What if the humans need help? What if they are trying to protect us from something dangerous? We will never know unless someone goes to look. Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. His people were natural explorers, and the idea of discovering something completely unknown was very tempting. But he was also not stupid. 17 expeditions had never returned. What makes you think we would succeed where others failed? He asked. Maybe we would not, Hee-jin admitted. But maybe we would be luckier, or smarter, or maybe we would ask the right questions that others did not think to ask. She pulled out a small device that projected a holographic map. I have been studying the flight paths of the lost expeditions. They all approached the border at different points, but they all had one thing in common. They went in expecting to find either empty space or hostile humans. What if that was their mistake? What do you mean? What if the humans left their border open for a reason? What if they are waiting for someone to approach them the right way? Do-hyun looked at the map, then at Hee-jin's determined face. This is completely crazy, he said. We could die. We could start a war. We could make things much worse. Yes, Hee-jin agreed. Or we could solve the biggest mystery in the galaxy. It took 3 more days to convince Do-hyun to join her expedition. It took another week to find the other people they would need. So Young, the Therian communications expert, was surprisingly easy to convince. When Hee-jin explained the plan, So Young just nodded and said, I have been having dreams about music from human space. I think it is calling to me. The hardest person to recruit was Kyung-soo, the old Drakmarian warrior. Hee-jin found him at a military base where he trained young soldiers. At first he refused to even listen to her idea. I am too old for suicide missions, he said gruffly. Find some other fool to get killed with you. But when Hee-jin showed him her research about the lost expeditions, he became interested despite himself. All of the ships that had disappeared had been lightly armed or completely peaceful. None had been properly equipped for trouble. If something dangerous happened to those ships, he said slowly, they would not have been able to defend themselves. A warrior knows that sometimes peace comes only through strength. So you will come with us? Kyung-soo sighed. Someone needs to keep you young fools alive. It might as well be me. Their ship was called the Wanderer's Edge. It was Do-hyun's own vessel, a small but fast explorer that could carry 6 people comfortably. It was not a warship, but Kyung-soo made sure it had enough weapons to defend itself if necessary. They spent 2 weeks preparing. Hee-jin loaded the ship's computer with every piece of information about humans that still existed. So Young installed the most advanced communication equipment she could find. Kyung-soo checked and rechecked their weapons and shields. Do-hyun made sure the engines and life support systems were perfect. The night before they left, they had a final meeting in the ship's small dining area. Once we leave this port, Do-hyun said, there will be no going back. If the council finds out what we are doing, they will try to stop us. Are we all sure about this? Each of them nodded. They had all made their choice. Good, Do-hyun said. Then let us go make history. The journey to the human border took 5 days. As they got closer, their instruments began picking up strange readings. The space ahead of them looked normal to their eyes, but their computers said it was full of energy patterns that should not exist. The gravitational fields are wrong, Hee-jin said, staring at her screen. It is like someone has been rearranging the way space works. So Young was listening to radio signals from the direction they were traveling. The music is getting stronger, she reported. It is definitely coming from inside human space. Kyung-soo was watching their weapon systems. Everything is working normally so far, but I am detecting some kind of scanning beam. Something is watching us. Do-hyun felt his hands getting sweaty on the ship's controls. How close are we to the border? 2 hours, Hee-jin said. Maybe less. As they flew closer, the strange readings got stronger. The space around them began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot ground. Colors that had no names danced at the edges of their vision. This is not natural, Kyung-soo muttered. Someone has done something to this entire region of space. But what? Asked Do-hyun. Before anyone could answer, all of their instruments went completely crazy. Alarms started ringing. Warning lights flashed red. Every screen on the ship showed impossible readings. We are crossing the border, Hee-jin shouted over the noise. Right now! For exactly 2.3 seconds, reality seemed to break apart around them. The ship spun in directions that should not exist. Colors became sounds and sounds became feelings. Do-hyun felt like he was flying through the dreams of sleeping gods. Then suddenly everything was normal again. The alarm stopped. The lights went back to their usual colors. The instruments showed regular readings, but when they looked out the windows, they saw something that made them all gasp in amazement. The nearest star was surrounded by a shell of metal and crystal that captured its light and turned it into useful energy. Planets moved in perfect orbits that had been carefully planned by someone with incredible knowledge. Between the worlds, streams of pure energy flowed like rivers of light, carrying ships and supplies from place to place. By all the stars, whispered So Young, they did not disappear. They became something incredible. Jin was frantically taking readings with every instrument they had. The technology readings are off the scale. This is not just advanced, this is like comparing a campfire to the sun itself. Do-hyun was trying to process what he was seeing. Every planet in view had been changed. They were perfect spheres of cities and gardens with no waste and no pollution. The moons had been turned into factories and research stations. Even the asteroids had been organized into useful formations. How is this possible, he asked. 300 years is not enough time to do all of this. Before anyone could answer, their communication system activated by itself. A calm voice spoke to them in perfect galactic standard, the language that all species use to talk to each other. Welcome to human space, crew of the Wanderer's Edge. My name is Minho, and we have been expecting you. The four friends looked at each other with wide eyes. They had found the humans. Now they had to discover what the humans had become. Please follow the navigation beacon we are sending to your ship. The voice continued. We have prepared a place for you to dock safely. There is much we need to discuss. As their ship began following the beacon toward a space station that was larger than most moons, Hyejin realized that their adventure was just beginning. They had come looking for answers about what happened to humanity. What they were about to discover would change everything they thought they knew about what was possible in the universe. The space station they approached was unlike anything in the known galaxy. It was not just big, it was alive. The metal walls moved and shifted like breathing. Lights flowed along its surface like blood in veins. Gardens grew on the outside, somehow surviving in the vacuum of space. Do-hyun guided their ship into a docking bay that opened to welcome them like a flower blooming. As soon as they were inside, the bay filled with breathable air. They did not even need their spacesuits. The technology here is incredible, Hyejin whispered as she watched the docking process. They are controlling matter and energy like it is clay in their hands. Through the windows, they could see the docking bay walls. They were covered in moving pictures that seemed to tell stories without words. Some showed the history of Earth. Others showed humans traveling to distant stars. But many showed things that none of the visitors could understand. Mathematical formulas that looked like poetry. Star charts of places that did not exist on any map. And symbols that hurt to look at directly. A soft chime sounded in their ship. The voice of Minho spoke again. You are safe to leave your vessel. The atmosphere and gravity have been adjusted for your comfort. Please do not be afraid. They opened their ship's door and stepped out onto the docking bay floor. The surface felt warm under their feet and it seemed to glow with a soft inner light. The air smelled like flowers after rain. Waiting for them were 3 humans. The first was Minho, the man who had been speaking to them. He looked like a normal human in his 40s with black hair and kind eyes. He wore simple clothes that seemed to be made of some material that shifted color slightly as he moved. Next to him stood a woman named Yoonji. She was younger, maybe in her 30s, with long hair and a gentle smile. When she looked at them, they felt like she could see into their hearts and understand their fears and hopes. The third human was a man called Ji Hwan. He was older than the others, with gray hair and hands that looked like they had built many things. But his eyes were bright with intelligence and curiosity. Welcome to the Human Cooperative, Minho said, stepping forward. I know you have many questions. We have been waiting 300 years for someone like you to find us. Kyung-soo, the old warrior, was looking around carefully. His training told him to watch for threats, but everything he saw seemed peaceful. Why did you wait, he asked. Why did you not contact us? Because, said Yoonji softly, sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone you care about is to stay away from them. She gestured for them to follow her down a corridor that seemed to stretch much further than should be possible. The walls showed scenes of space, but not empty space. This space was full of life. Plants that grew between the stars, animals that swam through cosmic dust, entire ecosystems that existed in the void between worlds. This is impossible, So Young said, staring at the images. Life cannot survive in space. Life as you know it cannot, Ji-hwan agreed. But life is much more creative than most people believe. When you give it the right tools and enough time, it can adapt to anything. They walked through corridors that changed to meet their needs. When Kyung-soo felt tired, benches appeared along the walls. When Hye-jin wanted to look more closely at something, the walls became transparent to show her what was on the other side. When So-young heard beautiful sounds, the ceiling opened to show them the source. A choir of crystalline creatures that sang in harmony with the movement of the stars. How is all of this possible? Do-hyun asked. The technology, the scale of everything. It is beyond anything we thought could exist. Minho smiled. 350 years ago, we discovered something that changed everything. We learned that consciousness, the thing that makes a mind aware and able to think, could be treated as a technology. They entered a large room with walls that showed the galaxy from above. But this view was different from any map they had seen before. It showed not just stars and planets, but flows of information, networks of communication, and patterns of thought that connected living beings across vast distances. We learned how to share our minds, Yoonji explained. Not just our thoughts and memories, but our ability to understand and solve problems. When 1,000 humans think together as one, they can solve puzzles that no individual could even imagine. She touched a wall, and the image changed. Now it showed Earth as it had been long ago, blue and green and beautiful but small. Then the image began to change, showing how humans had grown and learned and built. Within 50 years of our breakthrough, we had solved faster-than-light communication. We learned how to create matter and energy from pure thought. We discovered how to reshape space and time to meet our needs. Hye-jin was recording everything on her portable computer, but she was beginning to realize that her instruments could not measure what she was really seeing. You became more than human, she said quietly. No, said Ji-hwan firmly. We became more human than we had ever been before. We kept everything that made us who we were. Our curiosity, our love for each other, our desire to explore and create. We just became better at expressing those things. So-young was listening to something that the others could not hear. The music, she said suddenly. It is coming from everywhere. It is the sound of your minds working together, is it not? Yoonji nodded. Every thought, every idea, every moment of understanding creates a note in the great song. The music you hear is the sound of our civilization thinking. They continued their tour, seeing wonders that had no names, gardens where each plant was a work of art that also served a practical purpose, workshops where humans created new forms of matter by combining elements that should not exist, libraries where knowledge was stored not in books or computers but in patterns of light that could teach you simply by looking at them. But the most amazing thing was the humans themselves. They seemed normal at first glance, but as the visitors spent more time with them, they began to notice small differences. The humans moved with perfect grace as if they understood exactly how their bodies worked. Their eyes held depths of knowledge that seemed impossible for any individual mind to contain. And sometimes, when they thought no one was looking, they would pause and smile at something wonderful that only they could see. You are still individuals, Kyung-soo observed. You have not become a hive mind. Individual notes can create harmony without losing their unique sound, Minho said. We are still ourselves. We are just more ourselves than we used to be. They came to a viewing chamber that looked out over a garden world. The planet below was covered in cities that looked like they had been grown rather than built. Between the buildings, parks and forests created patterns that were both beautiful and functional. The sky itself seemed to pulse with gentle light. This is beautiful beyond belief, Hye-jin said, pressing her hands against the transparent wall. But I do not understand why you hid all of this from us. Why did you cut contact with the rest of the galaxy? The three humans exchanged a look. In that single glance, they seemed to have an entire conversation. Show them, Yoonji said quietly. Ji-hwan touched another wall control, and the view changed. Now they were looking at a simulation, a model of what might have happened if humans had shared their breakthrough with other species. The simulation showed worlds in chaos, species that had received human technology before they were ready to understand it, civilizations that had collapsed under the weight of too much change too quickly, wars fought with weapons that could destroy entire star systems, and worst of all, it showed species that had lost themselves completely, becoming pale copies of humanity instead of growing into their own potential. Every species needs to find its own path to advancement, Minho explained sadly. When we realized how dangerous our knowledge could be in the wrong hands, or even in the right hands at the wrong time, we knew we had to isolate ourselves. But you have been watching us, So-young said. It was not a question. From a distance, Yunji admitted. We have prevented some disasters. We have given some subtle help when it was needed. But always from the shadows, always making it look like natural events or lucky accidents. Do-hyun felt a chill of understanding. The plague of Vega 7. The solar storm that missed the Kalari homeworld by just a few kilometers. The asteroid that changed course and missed the Therian colony ships. You saved us, Hyejin whispered. How many times have you saved us without us knowing? It does not matter, Ji-hwan said. What matters is that your civilizations continue to grow and learn on their own. The Galactic Council is something beautiful. Dozens of different species choosing cooperation over conquest. We would never want to interfere with that. But there was something in his voice that suggested there was more to the story. Kyung-soo, with his warrior's instincts, heard it first. There is something else, he said. Something you have not told us yet. You are not just hiding to protect us from your technology. You are preparing for something. The humans looked at each other again, and this time their silent conversation seemed much longer and more serious. Finally, Min-ho nodded. You deserve to know the truth. All of it. But first you should understand. Once you know what we are about to tell you, you can never unknow it. Your lives will be changed forever. The four visitors looked at each other. The door led them into a chamber that hurt their minds to look at. It was not just a room. It was a space that existed in more dimensions than their brains could process. The walls curved away in directions that should not exist. The ceiling was both infinitely high and close enough to touch. And in the center of it all was a display that showed the galaxy in ways they had never imagined. Sit down, Min-ho said gently, and chairs appeared behind each of them. What we are about to show you will be easier to understand if you are comfortable. The visitors sat, though Do-hyun noticed that his chair seemed to adjust itself to support him perfectly. Even the temperature of the air around him changed to match what his body needed. We told you that we learned to enhance consciousness, Yunji began. But we did not tell you that we were not the first to make this discovery. The display in the center of the room changed. Now it showed the galaxy from a perspective that made it look like a living thing. Streams of energy flowed between star systems. Patterns of light pulsed like a heartbeat. And in several places, there were regions that glowed with the same kind of organized energy they had seen around human space. 4 regions of the galaxy contain what we call mature zones, Ji-hwan explained. Areas where species have undergone the same kind of exponential growth that we experienced. Each zone contains roughly 2,000 star systems just like ours. Hyejin leaned forward, studying the display. You are not alone. There are others like you. The architects in the galactic north, Min-ho said, pointing to one glowing region. They were the first to make the breakthrough over 1 million years ago. They specialize in reshaping matter and energy on cosmic scales. The display showed images of the architect region. Entire star systems had been rearranged for maximum efficiency. Planets orbited in impossible patterns that somehow worked perfectly. Stars themselves had been modified to burn longer and provide exactly the right kind of energy for the worlds around them. The gardeners in the eastern spiral arm, Yunji continued, indicating another zone. They discovered how to merge biology and technology into something new. Every world in their space is a single living organism. This region looked like a garden that had grown to galactic proportions. Instead of metal ships and space stations, there were creatures the size of moons that served as transportation. Planets were covered in what looked like vast neural networks made of living tissue. And the dreamers in the galactic west, Ji-hwan said. They learned to exist partially outside normal space and time. They experience reality in ways that we still do not fully understand. The dreamer region was the strangest of all. Space itself seemed to ripple and flow like water. Ships appeared and disappeared without moving through the space between. And sometimes the images showed things that clearly existed in multiple places at the same time. So Young was listening to frequencies that the others could not hear. They all have music, she said in wonder. Each region sings a different song, but they all harmonize together. The 4 mature zones have been in communication for over a century, Min-ho confirmed. We share knowledge and coordinate our activities. We have become friends across the vast distances of space. Kyung-soo was studying the display with a warrior's eye for tactics and strategy. You said that each zone contains species that chose isolation. But isolation from what? What made all 4 of you decide to hide from the rest of the galaxy at the same time? The 3 humans looked at each other with expressions that mixed sadness and determination. Show them the core, Yunji said quietly. The display zoomed in toward the center of the galaxy, where the stars were packed close together around the massive black hole that anchored everything. But as the image focused, it became clear that something was very wrong with the galactic core. The space around the central black hole was filled with structures that defied explanation. They were not built. They grew like crystals or cancer. They pulsed with energy that made the combined output of the four mature zones look tiny by comparison. And worst of all, they were expanding. "We call them the consumers," Jihuan said, his voice heavy with worry. "They are what happens when a species chooses a different path to advancement. Instead of learning to work together and grow carefully, they decided to take everything they could from everything they encountered." The display showed the history of the galactic core over millions of years. Once it had been full of normal star systems with planets and civilizations. But slowly, systematically, everything had been absorbed into the growing consumer structures. "They do not just conquer worlds," Minho explained. "They break down matter and energy and consciousness itself, then rebuild it to serve their purposes. Every species they encounter becomes part of their collective, but not as partners, as resources to be consumed." Hyojin felt sick as she watched the images. "How many civilizations have they absorbed?" "Millions," Yunji said simply. "The galactic core once contained the oldest and most advanced species in the galaxy. Now it contains only the consumers and the raw materials they have not yet processed." Du Hyun was trying to understand the scale of what he was seeing. "How big are they now? How much of the galaxy do they control?" "About 15% of all star systems," Jihuan answered. "But they are not spreading randomly. They are following a pattern, moving outward in a spiral that will eventually reach the outer arms where most young civilizations live." The display changed again, showing projected paths of expansion. Red lines crept outward from the galactic core like infection spreading through a body, and those lines pointed directly toward the regions of space where the Galactic Council civilizations lived. "When will they reach us?" Kyung-soo asked, though from his tone it was clear he already suspected the answer would not be good. "At their current rate of expansion, they will encounter the outer galactic civilizations in approximately 200 years, Minho said. "Maybe less if they decide to accelerate their growth." So Young was still listening to the cosmic music, but now she could hear something else in it. A discordant note that grew stronger as the display showed more of the consumer territory. "They make anti-music," she said with a shiver. "Where they pass, the songs of other species stop forever. That is why we chose isolation," Yunji explained. "The four mature zones realized that we could not openly interact with younger civilizations while this threat existed. If we revealed ourselves, if we shared our technology freely, one of two things would happen. Either the young civilizations would be overwhelmed by knowledge they were not ready for and would destroy themselves," Jihuan continued, "or they would become strong enough to attract the attention of the consumers earlier than expected. So instead," Minho finished, "we chose to become the galaxy's immune system, hidden guardians preparing for the day when the consumers finally reach the outer arms." The display showed new images, the four mature zones as they were now. But these were not peaceful garden worlds and research stations. They were fortresses. Each zone was surrounded by defensive structures that made the greatest military installations in council space look like children's toys. "We have been preparing for 2 centuries, Yunji said, "building defenses, developing weapons, training for a war that will determine whether diversity survives in this galaxy or whether everything becomes part of the consumer collective." Heejin realized the full scope of what she was seeing. "You are not just hiding from us. You are protecting us, all of us, every species in the galaxy that has not yet been consumed. The Galactic Council represents something precious," Minho said with deep feeling. "Dozens of different species choosing cooperation over conquest, trade over war, diversity over uniformity. That kind of galactic civilization has never existed before. It must be protected." Do Hyun was beginning to understand why the 17 previous expeditions had never returned. The ships that tried to cross your border, what happened to them? "We had to make a choice," Jihuan said sadly. "Either we allowed them to return with knowledge of our preparations, which might have caused panic and chaos throughout council space, or we asked them to stay and help with our work." "They stayed," Yunji added quickly. "All of them. When they understood what was at stake, they chose to remain and contribute to the defense effort. Their crews are safe and well, living in our worlds and helping to prepare for what is coming. Kyung-soo leaned back in his chair, trying to process everything he had learned. So the great mystery of human disappearance was not a mystery at all. It was a necessary sacrifice. You gave up your place in galactic society to become its secret protectors. Every day we remain isolated is another day for Council civilizations to grow and develop, Minho said. Another day for us to become stronger. Another day to find new ways to ensure that when the consumers finally arrive, they will find the galaxy defended. So Young had tears in her large blue eyes. You have been alone all this time carrying this terrible knowledge, preparing for a war that no one else knows is coming. Not alone, Yoonji said with a gentle smile. We have each other, all 4 mature zones working together, and we have had faith that when the time was right, representatives from the younger civilizations would find us and learn the truth. Like us, Yejin said. Like you, Minho confirmed. The third option was discussed in a place that existed outside of normal time. The humans called it a consensus chamber, where thoughts moved faster than light and years of conversation could happen in minutes. The 4 visitors found themselves sitting in chairs that connected their minds to the discussion, allowing them to experience the debate as the humans did. For what felt like hours but was actually only moments, they were part of a conversation that included not just Minho, Yoonji, and Ji-hwan, but representatives from all 4 mature zones. The architects spoke in mathematical concepts that shaped reality. The gardeners communicated through living metaphors that grew and changed as they spoke. The dreamers existed partially in the conversation, and partially in other dimensions entirely. When the consensus was reached, the visitors found themselves back in normal time, sitting in the same chamber but feeling like they had lived through years of the most intense discussion of their lives. We have made a decision, Minho announced. For the first time in 300 years, we are going to change our strategy. Yoonji was practically glowing with excitement. Your arrival here was not random chance. It was the result of the galaxy itself evolving. The younger civilizations have reached a point where they are ready for the next step. What kind of next step? Do-hyun asked, though he was not sure he was ready for the answer. Ji-hwan activated the chamber's display again. This time it showed not just the galaxy as it was, but as it could be. Council space was still filled with diverse civilizations, but now streams of communication and cooperation connected them to the 4 mature zones. Instead of hiding, the advanced regions were working openly with their younger cousins. We are going to begin a careful process of contact, Minho explained. Not the sudden revelation of all our technology, but a gradual introduction. We will start by helping the Council species solve some of their most difficult problems. Energy production, faster than light travel, medical advances that eliminate suffering, Yoonji listed, technologies that will make their lives better without overwhelming their societies. Heejin was studying the projection carefully. This will change everything. The entire balance of galactic civilization will shift. Yes, Ji-hwan agreed. But it will shift in a way that preserves what makes each species unique, while giving them the tools they need to survive what is coming. So-young was listening to the music that filled the chamber. The songs are changing, she said in wonder. I can hear new harmonies that were not there before. The galaxy is preparing to sing a new song. Kyung-soo, ever practical, was thinking about the military implications. The consumers will notice when Council civilizations start advancing more rapidly. This plan will attract their attention. That is the point, Minho said with a smile that was both gentle and fierce. We have been preparing to fight a defensive war, waiting for them to reach us. But there is another option. We can prepare the entire galaxy to fight back. The display changed to show battle formations on a galactic scale. Instead of 4 isolated mature zones trying to hold back the consumer expansion, it showed hundreds of systems working together in coordinated defense. Imagine, Yoonji said, a galaxy where every species has access to the technology they need to protect themselves. Where the Kalari exploration fleets can travel between galaxies in hours. Where the Drakmarian military has weapons that can stop consumer ships before they reach inhabited worlds. Where the Therian communication networks can coordinate defense across thousands of light years instantly. And where the Vorthan research capabilities can find new ways to fight an enemy that has been expanding, unopposed for millions of years, Ji-hwan added, looking directly at Hyejin. Do-hyun felt his heart racing with excitement and fear. You are talking about turning the entire galaxy into a fortress. Not a fortress, Minho corrected. A community, a family. The consumers succeed because they force everything to become the same as them. Our strength comes from our differences. A galaxy where every species contributes their unique strengths to the common defense will be something the consumers have never faced before. The conversation continued for hours as they worked out the details of the plan. It would start small. The 4 visitors would return to council space with carefully prepared stories about finding automated systems maintaining the human border. Over time, those systems would begin offering limited assistance to nearby civilizations. The process will take decades, Yunji explained. We will introduce new technologies slowly, always making sure that each species has time to adapt and grow. By the time the consumers reach the outer arms, they will find not helpless prey, but an organized galaxy ready for war. As the planning session wound down, Hyojin realized that she needed to ask the question that had been bothering her since the beginning. Why us? She said. Why did you let our expedition succeed when 17 others failed? Minho looked at his companions, then back at the 4 visitors. Because you represented something new. Previous expeditions were driven by curiosity or military concerns or commercial interests. Your group came together because you cared about solving a mystery and helping others. That kind of cooperation across species lines is exactly what the galaxy will need to survive. Also, Jihuan added with a slight smile, our predictive models suggested that this particular combination of species and personalities would be most likely to make the right choices when presented with difficult truths. So Young laughed. A sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. You knew we would agree to help. We hoped, Yunji said. But hope is not certainty. You could have chosen to stay here and help with our preparations. You could have chosen to return to council space and remain silent about what you learned. The fact that you chose to help us create a third option proves that the galaxy is ready for this next step. They spent their final day in human space visiting the crews of the 17 expeditions that had come before them. The visitors found them living in comfortable homes on garden worlds, working alongside humans on projects that would have seemed like magic just days before. Captain Taisu of the Kalari Deep Explorer smiled when he saw Do-hyun. I wondered when another Kalari would find this place, he said. Are you here to stay, or are you one of the lucky ones who gets to go back and prepare the way? Prepare the way, Do-hyun answered. Though I'm not sure I feel lucky about it. This seems like a safer place than what we are returning to. Safer, yes, Taisu agreed, but not as important. What you are about to do will determine whether our species, all of our species, survive the next few centuries. When it came time to leave, the 4 visitors gathered in the docking bay where their ship waited. The Wanderer's Edge had been quietly upgraded during their stay. New communication systems would allow them to stay in contact with human space. Enhanced sensors would let them detect consumer technology if it ever appeared in council space. And hidden defensive systems would protect them if they encountered anything hostile. Remember, Minho said as he saw them off, you are no longer just representatives of your own species. You are the first ambassadors of a new galactic alliance. The decisions you make and the actions you take will shape the future of every living thing in our galaxy. As their ship crossed back over the border into council space, the 4 friends sat quietly for a long time. Each of them was processing everything they had learned and everything that would be expected of them in the years to come. Finally, Hyojin broke the silence. So we are going to return to the Galactic Council and tell them that we found nothing but automated systems maintaining the human border. Yes, Do-hyun confirmed. And over the next few years, those systems will begin offering technological assistance to nearby worlds. The Council will debate and argue about whether to accept the help, Kyung-soo added. But eventually practical needs will win out over caution. And I will start teaching other Therian communication specialists to listen for new forms of music in the void between stars, So Young said. When they begin to hear the songs of the mature zones, we will know that the next phase of the plan is beginning. They flew in comfortable silence for a while, watching the normal space of the galaxy pass by. It looked the same as always, but now they knew the truth that lay beneath its peaceful appearance. Somewhere behind them, 4 regions of incredibly advanced civilizations were preparing for the greatest war in galactic history. Somewhere ahead of them at the galactic core, and force of unimaginable power was slowly consuming everything in its path. And everywhere in between, billions of beings lived their lives unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding around them. Do you think it will work? Do-hyun asked as they approached the outer border of Council space. Do you think we can really prepare the entire galaxy for what is coming? Hee-jin looked out at the stars that no longer seemed as distant or as separate as they once had. I think, she said slowly, that we are about to find out what happens when different species stop just getting along and start truly working together. The consumers have had millions of years to perfect their strategy, Kyung-soo observed, but they have always faced divided resistance. Individual species fighting alone, they have never encountered anything like what we are planning.